Stakeholder.
In gambling, an independent party with whom each of those who make a wager deposits the money or counters wager.
A person with an interest or concern in something, especially a business.
In emergency management, any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival and recovery of a given community. You.
Welcome to Stakeholder Prepping.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you are the stakeholder in your own survival. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
And I'm AC, and today we have a very special guest. We have an experienced blacksmith and knife maker, someone who I have actually purchased a ton of gear from. So I'm kind of a fanboy here, but I'm really excited to welcome Erich.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be here with this evening.
It's fantastic to meet you. And Erich, we know a little bit about you, but tell us a little bit about yourself for our audience so they can kind of get to know you a little bit. You know, what would you say your qualifications are? Give us kind of the Erich elevator pitch on your background.
How do you get started in this?
Sure.
And what do you do now?
So I'm a second generation blacksmith. I started swinging a hammer when I could see the top of an anvil. My uncle was a blacksmith. I think I forged more quarry chisels before I was 16 than I could count.
Wow.
Tens of thousands.
That's insane.
So, and I've been a blacksmith my whole life. I've done other things too, but it's the thing I've always come back to, blacksmithing and welding, because they're a good way to make money when, things go south. So basically think the book Great Expectations, and I'm pretty much Pip. I was in the Marine Corps. I studied martial arts. I was in business for a while, but I've always come back to blacksmithing. We were mostly tool makers and ornamental blacksmiths when I was young. I kind of drifted that off towards knife making because I was always interested in it. And I was also kind of trying to look for a product at the time that was shippable and that wasn't as heavy labor as the real big forgings that we've done in the past. And not because I don't mind the labor. I love the labor, just because I know I'm going to get old. Hell, I'm already pretty old now. But it's just going to get worse. And the heavy labor gets to wearing on you. So it was something I was really interested in. And I still do railings and stuff, guys. Like I still do ornamental stuff for the place. I mean, I'm not proud. I mean, it's steel. I'll build it. But, I do like the knife a lot. And I've been really focusing on that heavily for, 12, 15 years. But my first knife, I was maybe 8. I don't know. I can't remember my age. It was so terrible. I think I told this to someone else at the scrap bin and probably didn't even want it. But, to the scrap bin it went.
That's pretty awesome. So how long have you been doing blacksmithing, forging, welding like yourself? Obviously you're second generation, but how long have you been making knives as opposed to making tools?
I got serious about knives probably about 12 to 15 years ago, maybe a little longer. It's hard to remember once you start pushing 50. Everything starts to blend together.
So the company, Erich, at Fudo Forge, what does that mean? Is that, I think it's probably a Japanese word. Where did that come from?
It was, yeah. One of the deities, you see, we're into religion already.
Oh,
One
damn
of
it.
the old Shinto deities was Fudo Myo, and he's a fairy tale to me, like the Brothers Grimm, But from being in the martial arts for a while, he was like the crazy strong god with a sword for his enemies and a flaming whip for his friends to get him in line. And then it also doesn't mean anything in English, so honestly, it's trademarkable.
Oh, that's actually really cool.
I was looking for something that was different that I could actually get a U.S. trademark on.
You're a businessman
and I
too.
didn't want to
Look
just
at
use
that.
my name because I understand some guys do that, but I always kind of felt maybe a little bit narcissistic being like Orris blades.
So I'll tell you, I first found your stuff. This is crazy. I was in one of these, it was like a handmade kind of art store thing in Rapid City, South Dakota. And I just happened to be in the market I wanted a cool, just a kitchen knife. I wanted an all things badass kitchen knife because until then, I had probably only been able to afford your set of Hankels or something, And
Right.
so I wanted a badass do everything kitchen knife. And that was probably, gosh, it could have been 10 years ago. I mean, it was your old logo.
It's got to be close to that.
Maybe it was a decade ago. That is still my go-to every single day kitchen knife. That knife is still the knife that's attached to my cutting board. It's the same knife every day. So, no, I'm absolutely a believer. But you did kind of mention the other guys. I want to know, are there other knife makers that you that you like? Are there those guys, you know, like I see like the Snody knives and the Siebert knives and the Tom Brown Tracker. I mean, is there anybody that you like, or do you just 100%, you know, do your own thing? I'm sure you've been to Blade Show, right?
Oh, I have quite a few times. In fact, this is the first year I won't be exhibiting there for a while. I don't. I'm mostly a kitchen guy, so Blade shows diminishing returns for me. I mean, the Blade shows for the guys that want production stuff and the new release stuff and the hunting stuff, and I do some of that, but I'm mostly a kitchen cutlery guy at this point. It's not that I don't do the other things; it's just that's where most of my money is in the art shows. Like I did the Philadelphia Museum of Art show this past year, and I'll be in the Smithsonian next month.
Oh, wow.
So,
Very cool.
That's where most of my drive is kitchen cutlery and ornamental wrought iron now. But I do some of the other stuff. It's just not really been my big shtick. It's not as much joy to me. And one of the things is in the kitchen knife sector, if you don't do a good heat treat job or something, you know about it immediately.
And why is
You
that? Because I'm
you
stupid.
could make 1,000 hunting knives, and out of that 1,000 hunting knives, maybe 20 of those guys shoot a deer and have it with them, and maybe 10 of them
Oh,
do that more than once. But you put a chef knife in a professional cook's hands, it cuts 4 or 5 hours a day. If you fucked up, you'll know right away.
oh, that's actually
He will tell
it's
you.
crazy it's crazy to think about that. As I literally before this show, I pulled out like my Erich Orris handmade, you know, Damascus blade that's never
Yeah,
actually been used because it's so amazing that it's just a piece of art. So you're
right. But the
right.
kitchen stuff gets used constantly.
100%. So speaking of that, and I really want to know, I've got a lot of questions about just, you know, steel and metal and how it works. When you're designing a knife like that, are there differences in the steel or the just the raw materials you would choose between a kitchen knife and say the bushcrafty or hunting knife or, you know, the outdoor knife? Is it
Oh,
a different
absolutely.
really?
And some of it depends on what the knife is for, because of course you've got outdoor knives that are about cutting.
Hmm.
And, those knives pretty much have the same requirements that a kitchen knife does. But most of the bushcraft knives are more about bashing the crap out of stuff.
Right, right,
People are batoning them. They're using them like an axe or a hatchet. And
right.
I know some guys are like, oh, a hatchet, but that's really the tool for cutting down trees, guys. This knife is not the tool for cutting down a tree. You can do it, but it's not your best
Yeah,
choice.
you're gonna need some
Yeah.
band-aids for the blisters
Yeah.
if you're
And
using a knife.
just all that energy into your arm, and it doesn't have the weight behind the edge and all that stuff. I mean, that's why we build axes.
Right,
And I understand, like, from the bushcraft aspect, like, people are like, I need something that can do everything. I'm not dissing that.
right.
I'm just
Okay.
saying, if you have your druthers and you're going to cut down a tree, bring an axe, or better yet, a chainsaw. Um,
So when you're talking about the steel that goes into that, is there a particular steel that you like over others to work with? Like when you're forging something, what's the kind of material that you personally like to put in the forge and take a hammer to?
I don't choose steels based on whether I like to work with them or not. Because if I did that, I'd choose the lowest carbon thing I could find my hand. It's soft, it's butter, it forges, it bends, it grinds like crazy. I don't use any of those things anymore. Um, you, I don't really have a pet steel. I know some guys do, but I don't have a pet steel. I
Right.
think that the steel needs to be chosen based on the application. We have all these steels in the world. Industries built them for purposes. And we use them a little off purpose oftentimes, but still, if you're not close to the original purpose, I don't know what you're thinking. Like 1085 is great steel, right? You use 1085 for a camp knife or a bushcraft knife. I got no issues with that. I'd do that all day long, or a machete. Something you're going to beat on, you're going to treat it really poorly. You don't care if it has great edge retention or makes the best edge in the world. You just want it to be tough as balls. Great steel. I'd never use it for a kitchen knife.
And why
I'd
not?
never make a razor out of it.
Is that what
Is
it
that
is?
just
'Cause
because it's not
Doesn't have
gonna
enough
hold an
carbon or
edge?
enough abrasion resistance.
Okay. So for our audience, can you kind of walk through like the top 5 most common grades of steel and what that, 416, 4140, what all of those numbers actually mean?
Sure, I can give you a little bit. I mean, we'd need a couple of days if we
yeah.
really wanted to do this, but let's look
Yeah.
at it real quick.
Yeah.
So the 10 series steels, which I'm sure you've heard of,
Mhm.
I know you have because when Mr. Flowers was on, he mentioned 1095. And
Mhm.
1095 is a great steel. It's a high carbon steel. You see it mostly in springs originally, but this is an SAE thing. So this is the automotive engineer standards. So 1095 is not actually a recipe. It just has to meet a certain standard. So you have to
Oh,
be
Okay.
careful with where you get it from and
got
know
it.
what's in it. But it's a good high carbon steel if it's good steel, and it'll make a good kitchen knife, a good camp knife. You can temper it down and do other stuff, but basically that's your group of 10 series steels. 1095 is the only one in it that I find truly remarkable. Again,
Okay.
others are fine for bush knives and stuff.
So that
The f-
all that 10 series, is that all just a standard? None of that is a composition?
Correct.
Wow.
So are the 41s. All those numbered steels are all the standards of the automotive engineers.
I had no
So
idea.
4140 is a chromoly based steel, and it's got 4 points of carbon in it. That's the 4140. 4150, if you can guess, is 0.5% carbon. 4160 is 0.6% carbon.
Now you're talking about higher carbon, so that
Well,
would
we're still
be
lower than 1095,
gotcha. Okay. So it's still
0.95% carbon.
Got it. Okay.
1084, 0.84% carbon. But that's not even what it is anymore. It's a bigger range now because, again, it's a standard of what it can do for the automotive industry. And a lot of this I personally attribute to China. They order steel that comes from foreign countries. And like, this is supposed to be 1095. It shows up with 0.85% carbon. And they loosen the standards a little bit. And the automotive engineers change how they build things so it works because they got junk.
Wow. Interesting.
So I don't trust any of the numbered steels unless I get a ladle sample or a mass spectrometer from them, so I can see what's actually in the steel that I have in this batch.
That's really
gotcha.
interesting.
So it is as much material selection for you as the actual artwork itself.
Absolutely. I mean, there are some absolute garbage 10 series and 4 series steel out there.
So let me ask you, this might be a really weird question. Have you ever gone out to find like older steel they don't make anymore? Have you said, "Oh, I heard this old mill or plant had some kind of steel composition that I wanted." Have you ever done anything like that, or do you just order from some big brand new steel supplier?
I mostly at this point buy from the mill.
Okay.
And that's just because I know what I get. I get my ladle sample or I get my mass spec. I actually know
Okay.
what's in the steel.
Got it.
I know where it came from. I have done some of that old stuff. There's some old W2 around. It's great. I don't know if it's better than the new W2 or not. Probably a little bit.
Okay.
But the stuff that's coming out of Aldo at Steel Baron now is pretty good. I know he had some problems years back, but he's mostly corrected those.
I saw, I want to say you had, maybe it was a knife series you were making or something, but you had called it Paper Master Steel. And I thought that might have been like old steel or something.
Sure, it is. I have some of that. So 135W CRV4.
That's a bunch of
Right,
numbers.
that's a mouthful, huh?
Yeah.
Bowler manufactured it. The stuff that I have, and I still have some of it, is from just after World War II. In fact, it's got a little Star of David on it to let you know it was made in West Germany, not East Germany.
No kidding.
That's cool.
Yeah, but it's called the Papermeister steel. It was originally developed to cut paper with. So like for big process machines that were cutting paper for production. Great steel. Worth a lot, and it's old, and I have it. But again, that's a known quantity to me. It's like got all the mill markings on it. We know where it came from. We know exactly what it is. It's not like I picked up something off the ground that's a file and I figure maybe that's good steel.
Got it. Okay, so when I had saw that it was like German Papermeister steel, I was like, oh, I wonder
Mhm.
if that was like literally like you took apart an old like paper mill machine or something and pulled the blade
No,
out.
it's the old mill steel. You could only get it by ordering a whole melt. I got it all off
Really?
a German guy whose dad used to manufacture springs for machinery out of it.
Okay,
And
that's
I
interesting.
still have a little stash of it around if anyone wants some, but I'm holding on to it like it's gold now because it's getting
Yeah,
pretty
for
thin in the
sure.
earth.
And so, what is special about that steel?
It has a very, very high carbon rating. It's got almost 4% carbon in it,
Okay, and is
which
that just tough
is
to come by now?
insane. Yeah, no one
Interesting.
makes that anymore. Like to have that much carbon in it and be a pretty straightforward steel, it just got a little bit of tungsten and vanadium in it, as opposed to being one of these wild super steels they have now. It's a relic. It's really
Wow.
good, but it's not better than the new stuff. I mean, A11 will outperform it, but A11's not as cool, man.
So this is something you definitely put in the dishwasher every day.
I
Now,
guess if you want to, as long as you pay for it, you can do what you want to it.
Oh, I was gonna say you'd mentioned picking up a file off the ground. I'm gonna go a little crazy prepper on you, but if
Mm,
you were in a scavenging preppery end of the world type scenario, I've heard of the people making forging blades out of files or lawnmower blades and that kind of stuff. Is there any
sure.
truth to that? Can you do that? Is there better steel? Like, does a file make a good blade?
Depends on the file. And that's
Really?
the problem. There's no good answer to this. If it's an old file, like from the 60s or earlier, absolutely. It's 1095 or equivalent generally. Some of the new files are case hardened, so they're just carburized and hardened on the outside and the core's junk.
Oh,
But if it's a Swiss
oh,
velour file, then that's a beautiful file and great tool steel.
interesting.
But I
So
mean,
the older stuff versus the Harbor Freight stuff, like there's a
yeah, now we're
difference.
full of Chinese crap,
Got it.
and
makes
they
sense.
make a file that works, but it's if you've ever used files a lot, like a Swiss velour file makes even a Nichols file look like kind of a piece of junk.
That's really interesting.
Now, I know on your site you have a bunch of different models of Damascus knives, and
Mhm.
I mean the way that I understood it was the original recipe, if you want to call it that, for true Damascus steel was kind of lost in the Syrian Middle Ages or whatnot. But how is Damascus actually made
I think
now?
that that story is probably bogus. Um, and I'm not saying it definitely is, but I think it's probably bogus. I do not believe that we've actually lost some secret ancient tech that was beyond what we can do today. We do know that when you take a group of people, humans, and you isolate them somewhat and you make them steel poor and you give them a lot of combat, that they pretty much come up with pattern welded steel on their own. And we know this because the Middle Easterners did it. The northern people like Norway and Sweden's, the Vikings and such did it, and the Japanese did it. All three of these groups were steel poor. They didn't like to use nails in their buildings because steel was too valuable. So they did mortise and tenon joinery. And they all independently, at very different times, came up with pattern welded steels.
And
Wow.
that's really what Damascus is. It's a pattern welded steel.
Yep, the original purpose usually came from either wood style making or like the Japanese tahamagane, where when you make steel in that way, you don't just get steel. So we take black sand or some version of it, magnetite, hematite. Hematite has to be roasted first, of course. We do this pretty frequently, even in my shop. In fact, Walter Sorrells and I are doing this again soon. But we take that sand and we throw it in a handmade furnace with charcoal and we air blow it and we burn it for a very long time in a pretty narrow group of temperatures. So it's just charcoal and magnetite, magnetite and charcoal for 12 hours or more, sometimes a lot more, until you just can't even blow the triers out anymore, until the blowers stop. And what you end up with is this ugly bloom. If we were recording video, I'd get it out to show it to you guys so everyone could see it. But we're not recording video; it's not worth the time waste
We'll
for
put
you.
some
But
we'll put some links up. We'd love to see
I
some
can
if
get
you
you
have
a
some
picture or
photos.
something. Yeah.
Awesome.
But so you
Awesome.
get like this ugly bloom that looks like a black rock, and then you
Okay.
have to forge that down. But inside this black rock, you get three materials. You get wrought iron, which is that spindly wood grain stuff that's got almost no carbon in it. You get steel, good steel, a 0.7 to 1% carbon in it. And then you get um, cast iron. And that's a bad nomenclature nowadays because people use that word for cast steel, but we're talking
Right.
about the old fashioned pig iron. And pig iron has
Gotcha.
really high carbon contents and it's brittle. Now, the funny part is if you take pig iron and you take wrought iron and you forge all of them together and fold them a bunch of times, you get a product that's basically steel in two pieces. And if you weld them together enough, they'll actually exchange their carbon and become steel.
Interesting.
Okay. So that's where
That's
folding the blade
where
came
the
from.
pattern welding comes from, a brittle steel and a soft, malleable iron welded together. And this is a very simplified, like lies to
Sure.
children version, mind you. But
Good. We're
um,
children.
well, I'm just saying, like I'm trying to
Yeah.
keep it relatively simple, but basically you can put the two of them together and create a steel product out of a pattern welded thing. And that's what you get with Damascus. You can mix two things, a hard and a soft thing that are both inferior, and get a really superior quality blade.
Got it. So that's really what it's about. It's about taking the two inferior products and making something usable. It's
Pretty
not
much, yeah.
two. I always kind of assumed it was two superior products and you're making like
No,
super steel or
it's
something.
how to make something good out of garbage, man.
That's crazy because it just looks so badass. Yeah, it looks
It
so
does, but
cool.
like all the pattern welding we do for looks is
hmm
mostly modern. You'll see a little tiny bit of it in old Japan, and you'll see a
hmm
little bit tiny bit of it in old like Viking pieces. Those are like pieces that were for kings, man. And then of course you'll
Interesting.
see in Japan they talk about the pattern from the welding that you can see in it.
Yeah,
Um,
but not like the Damascus. You just mean kind of along the
right, it's
blade
not like the
line, right?
Damascus we do now. You
Right.
can just
Whereas,
see the way they folded it, and the different ways they fold it give it different patterns, and they see beauty in the flaw of the silica and the garbage that's stuck in the steel. That's what you're seeing.
ah,
Gotcha.
interesting. And is that where you see like that? I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing it wrong. Probably like that Hamong line. Is that what it
No,
is?
that's actually a separate thing. You see both of them independently, but you'll
Oh,
generally only see that pattern in the portion of the blade that's hard.
interesting. And is that going to be the
Above the
back of the
Hammond where
blade?
it's soft, it doesn't show up as much.
And you want harder steel along the spine of the blade or harder
Along the
steel
edge.
along the edge?
Mhm.
Okay,
And that's
interesting.
all that is. And I do that really frequently with kitchen knives because it's pretty. Again, now we do it for
Right,
beauty more than for function.
right.
But you lay a clay down on the spine to retard its cooling. So the edge cools fast and gets hard, but the spine cools slower and misses the martensite curve, stays soft. And then when you etch them and polish them, they polish and etch differently because they're in different mechanical states,
That's really
metallurgically.
interesting.
Now, are you? There's different types of forging, and I know, like you said, there's case hardening where it's the outside is hard, but the inside is malleable and just junk. But the different types of forging, there's drop forging, there's cold hammer forging, there's
Okay.
induction
Oh yeah.
forging. What
What
kind
does
of
that even mean?
forging do
Yeah.
you actually
So
Yeah.
do?
most of what we're doing and all of what I'm doing is open die drop forging. Open die drop forging just means you've got a drop and you're forging it in open dies. That's what you're doing when you hammer something on an anvil too, is open die drop forging.
Okay.
Um, Closed die drop forging is like what you see them do with, do you know what the big 50s are? Those big 50, like
No.
it's like 50,000 ton hydraulic presses they make airplane parts on.
Oh.
So they've
Oh,
got a
okay. The big
pre-formed
die
die on the
cutters.
top and bottom, and they put a
Oh.
piece of titanium on there that's hot, and then they smush it in one push and make a shape. That's
The-
closed die drop forging
that makes sense.
because the die is closed off instead of
Yeah.
open on the sides. Yeah.
Oh.
Most of the other stuff is referring more to the heating versions than the forging. I mean, most actual forgings happen open die or closed die or roll forging like they do in the steel mills, where you'll hear like if you buy steel at a steel supply shop, like hot rolled round means
hmm
they rolled it hot. Cold rolled round means the final rolling was cold.
And what does that
Interesting.
do to the actual product? Hot versus cold forging.
Cold rolling can, that's mostly done for soft steels like 1018 and A36. There's some exceptions, but the cold rolling is mostly done for that. Cold rolling doesn't leave forge scale on there like the mill scale. So it's a clean, bright material. That's how you'll see 1018 finished.
Okay.
A36 is almost always hot rolled. So you always see scale on it. So it's got that black mill scale the whole way over it. Cold forging can increase its toughness a little bit because it's been work hardened, but we're talking about little minor deviations that matter to the architectural ironwork world, like when you're doing structural iron, but don't have any bearing whatsoever on the tool world because they're all just literally noodle soft compared to the hard steels.
Interesting.
Gotcha.
So
S-
it- when you're talking about like you're hand making a knife, obviously, and you're hand making tools, does the technology exist today to build a better knife with a factory than you could build as far as just quality, or is a
You
hand
mean like a
forged knife?
production versus a
Yeah,
custom?
yeah,
No, no. In fact, I think most of the time, if the custom knife maker is good, you get a better product than you ever can from production.
really. Even today, even with AI and going to the
Yeah.
moon and all that shit.
The problem is production knives are made on the purpose of making money.
Right.
And I'm not picking on them. They do a great job. There's some good production stuff out there. Shun products, for instance, are pretty good production knives. But they're heat treating in large batches. They're trying to reduce their costs every way they can to benefit their stockholders. They're still trying to give you a good product that you don't complain about and you're happy with.
Sure.
When you deal with the custom, if it's a good maker, you're talking about someone who's spending very detailed time on each individual piece. I probably never hardened more than 4 or 5 knives at a time. And even then, they're one back to back to each other. It's not like they're all happening together.
Wow. So I'd like to just talk about like cost real quick. If somebody wanted to make, say, I want Erich Orris to forge me a custom knife, just ballpark, and I know this is a huge question, but where does that price start? And then what are the things that make it exponentially more expensive? Is it all size? Is it all materials? Is it a combination of all of them? But like, what do you pay?
Let's just pick a chef knife to make it simple, because as I said, let's pick
Okay.
one.
Yep.
If we're in a regular size chef knife, 6 to 8 inches, we're going to start on my chef knife at about $400 no matter what.
Okay.
Simplest, most basic thing I can make you. It'll still be really nice, good fit and finish, quality heat treat, nothing fancy.
Mm-hmm.
If we start getting into more complex Damascus patterns, if we start putting on Hammond lines and having nice polishes, if we start using exotic woods or fancy materials, we can very easily blow through $4,000 or $5,000.
Wow. And how many, in a $4,000 knife, how many hours do you have into that?
It's pretty variable, but it's not as much as you want me to tell you, because you're trying to ask me my hourly rate, man.
Okay, that's true. I guess that's true. I'm not trying to do
good.
that.
No worries.
Yeah.
I'm just playing around.
Sure.
I'm pretty good and fast at this now. It took me a long time to get here.
Mm-hmm.
I can forge a knife probably in about 20 minutes.
Wow.
Damascus is a much longer process because, of course, we have to weld it. It gets folded. There's a lot of dwell processes and stuff. But the part where the time really kicks in is once it's forged, it's trimmed, it's rough ground, and then you heat treat it, final grind it. And then from there to make the really nice knife. I've seen a lot of guys try to come up with gimmicks for it, but I've never found a way to replace the hand finishing. Just standing there for hours on end with sandpaper, just sanding that thing by hand.
Yeah.
So you're not doing acid etching to get the Damascus to pop. You're
Sure we
actually
are,
sanding it
but
out.
you still have to polish the crap out of it first.
Okay.
So before I etch my Damascus to show you that pattern, because the reaction between the two different metals to the acid makes that really drastic pattern, I've already hand sanded that thing down until it's a solid 800 or 1000 grit finish on the whole blade before it ever sees acid.
Gotcha. So it's glass smooth on the edges or on the sides of that blade before you even start to touch
the
it.
spine, the K-tip if it's a clip tip, the choil, all of it.
Wow.
Interesting.
It's a nice big foot tall pile of sandpaper for a kitchen knife.
So what's the I'm gonna ask you some questions, some weird ones here. What's the weirdest thing anybody's ever asked you to build? What's the weirdest custom thing you've ever done?
It was like a Naruto sword thing, and when I saw it, I just cringed inside a little bit. And at the time, I was feeling pretty poor, so I thought about it, and I gave him a number for it, but thank God the number was too high for him. I didn't have to make it.
What's a Naruto? So what is that?
It's some freaking anime thing. It was this really ridiculous anime sword.
Really?
And the guy's like, so they're like, we could train with it and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, even the samurai don't train with live swords in the old days. Like, that's the way to die.
No, it was the bamboo. Come on.
Yeah.
So is there anything is there a blade type that you hate making? Is there a blade? Because I think you once had told me about like I think is it the Tonto style blade maybe, but like the point, like
yeah. I love Tontos and I love the Japanese sword point, but that abortion that Lynn Thomas came up with called the chisel point at Cold Steel.
That's right, the chisel
point. I will
point.
not make that.
No,
that is ridiculous. That has no. I don't know what it is about guys now that think they're going to make a better fighting blade. We haven't been routinely killing people with knives for a very long time. Just go pick one of the old ones. It can be the Japanese, it can be the Knights of Europe. They killed men all day, every day with those things, and they told their blacksmiths what worked and what didn't. And that's about when they got their best. If you want to fix the materials and use better materials, by all means do it, but you're not going to get better blade geometry when you're not allowed to do the bad things they did to figure it out.
That's
So
a good point.
that's a really good point. I never thought about that. So that I didn't realize that chisel point, that's new. That's not something that came from like feudal Japan. That's something we
That
made
was
up.
Lynn Thomas at Cold Steel.
No
It's
shit.
totally made up. Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's not a Tano point. That's a chisel point.
Okay, so all those like, yeah, those cheap like Tonto samurai looking knives you see with that chisel point blade, that's not traditional at all.
It shouldn't be an edge come in cross and then like the 45-degree angle straight up to the point.
Yep.
The Kisaku's supposed to have a curve to it as it goes up.
Okay.
So it's supposed to be elliptical to the point.
Mhm.
That's the Japanese Tonto or samurai sword point, the katana point. It's not this stupid butchered corner. That's easy to machine on a CNC machine. It's this beautiful flowing curvature. And they had short ones and middle ones and long ones depending on the time. And I've got my opinions about which one's better, but that doesn't matter. Those are all traditional. But that little chisel point, that's a modern manufacturing invention.
You're talking about like the
Cold
Tonto,
Steel
the
Tano.
wakizashi, and the actual sword, right?
Yeah, the Daito set. Yeah.
Daito, that's the word.
Yeah. Okay. That's crazy. I had no idea. Like we have been culturally convinced that was like this old school Japanese design, and it's totally modern.
Yeah, it's totally modern. It wasn't a quick, sharp angle like that. It was a nice, beautiful curvature with a lot of class, and it's extremely hard to do and make it look good, especially to get the beautiful little line between where you switch from the standard edge to the curvature on the point coming up through Kisaku. It's tremendously difficult to do until you get good at it.
That's crazy. So you won't do that. The cold steel that I'm
chisel
that
point, I won't
chisel
do
point.
it. Yeah.
Won't do it. You won't do it. You won't put your name on it.
No, like if you paid me enough money, I'd probably make it for you, but I won't touch mark it.
Okay, that's interesting.
So, if somebody did want to do a completely custom knife, they have all of their preferences, their measurements, they've got their sizes or whatnot. Will you work with that inside of their bounds to try to match it?
What normally ends up happening for me is the designer doesn't know enough about a blade to design well.
Guilty.
So usually I try to do my best to help them come to the assumption that what they're doing isn't quite how they want it, as politely as I can. I had a chef come to me one time and he wanted this Deba Bocho, so the old Deba Japanese knife, but he wanted it double beveled, but he wanted it a quarter of an inch thick on the spine because he wanted to do heavy work with it. And it's just like, I understand how you got to that thought, but let's start working on what you actually want. So it's great to design a knife. And if you've got a whole lot of experience with them, you very well might do a great job. But sometimes we just don't realize the things we're missing. Like the quality of steel is entirely different. The Japanese still make that big, thick Deba with that super long single bevel because it's traditional. And the Japanese are very traditional. And I both love and hate that about them. But the steel's a lot better now. So there are very few knives that need to be over 125 thousandths or an eighth of an inch, if you will, at the spine. They exist, but they're few and far between. Like maybe a blade sports knife that you're going to beat the crap out of, or a bushcraft knife that you're going to baton like crazy and treat it like it's an axe. Maybe it needs to be a little bit thicker, particularly if you're using softer steel, so it's a little bit tougher.
Yep.
But most knives don't need to really be much thicker than an eighth of an inch at the spine. It's a cutting tool.
And speaking of cutting tool, what would you say is kind of the ideal angle edge, and how does somebody actually keep it? What are some of the
sharpening edge?
Yeah. Would you say 12 degrees is too fine? Is 20 degrees more accurate?
Again, it depends on what you're doing. I do everything freehand. It's all freehand, but I don't use any jigs or anything at all. Like I'll check stuff with a dial indicator or micrometer to make sure I'm in the right spot, but I don't jig it up and do it on a
Really?
machine. It's just
All
free in
that's
my hands.
that's all done by hand, really?
Oh, it's completely freehand. My sharpening, everything's freehand.
Wow.
Um, if you want to get good at that, you just have to do it for a really long time.
Right.
Takes a couple thousand.
I can imagine.
But yeah, I don't know. My sharpening bevel freehand is probably right around 15 degrees aside, and that's for a kitchen knife. I will go more blunt for certain things, and I'd go finer for a razor. I mean, the requirements of a knife for shaving your face or your tender delicates, for instance, are entirely different than the requirements for a knife that you cut food with.
And
That's
so
a good point.
why, I guess, yeah, speak to me about like the chef knife, because I've seen you build both knives that have it's a dual plane knife and just a single plane on one side. What's the difference in tasks there for doing that?
On the bevels, I got you. So
Yeah.
like a single bevel versus double bevel.
Right. Sorry, I'm using the wrong
You're
words
good.
exactly.
No worries, man. I just want to make sure I'm on the same
Yep,
page as
yep,
you.
yep.
So the double bevel is the old, I don't want to call it European, but the Western standard, like we always did them that way.
Yeah.
The Japanese did the chisels, and basically what ends up happening is when you do a chisel, it's a right or a left-handed knife.
Okay.
So you want the flat side on the non-cut side towards your offhand. So the bevel's on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
This allows you to very, very accurately place the side of that blade and slice super thin, perfect cuts. But it also has a
Oh.
tendency to have torsion in it. So it's much more difficult to use. So the double bevel is easier to use. The single bevel is harder to use. The single bevel can do some extra things. If you're really good with the knife, you can do it with either one of them.
Wow.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah,
like the Asuba is the vegetable knife that's a chisel, the
Yeah.
professional chef's vegetable knife in Japan. The Nikiri has a double bevel, and that's more like the home user's knife. It's a little
Okay.
easier to use. But you can still turn a Nikiri so that your bevel's flat and get the same cut as you get with the Asuba. You just have to be good with the knife.
Oh, yeah, I guess I never thought about that. It's all about angle. It's all about that angle of incidence. You can actually make the bevel flat on the one side. You just have to
Sure.
turn the knife more. Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to, interiorly rotate your wrist,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. You have to know what you're doing. Yeah, that's interesting. So it sounds like to me too, just looking at the stuff you have built, which is beautiful, but you're not just a blacksmith, but you're also a woodworker, right? I mean, do you enjoy that too? Is that the same skill set? Is it completely different? You got to know what you're doing.
The woodworking that's on the knife isn't completely different because I don't really you don't find a lot of planing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, hand sanding I guess is the same either way, just the amount of pressure it takes. But most of the woodworking on the knife we do with steel practices on grinders and stuff. It's not that terribly different. You change adhesives, and maybe
Sure.
you change abrasives, but it's pretty straightforward. I like woodworking, but that doesn't put me in the same level as my friend Bruce at Mozart Furniture that's doing like mortise and tenon and heavy inlays, and that's to me that's woodworking. He's
Sure.
down there planing off stuff and doing all the like peg work and everything to lock things together. That's real woodworking to me. To me, it's just we're drilling holes and we're grinding stuff to shape. It's not really fancy
Got it. So
woodworking.
fitting the handle isn't like the art form that I
No,
probably
it
think
has
it
to be
is.
done really well, but it's
Sure.
relative. It's the same as knife making. Like to forge a knife, you only need like 3 of the blacksmithing forging techniques. They're 3 of the
Interesting.
easiest ones you teach someone in the beginning. They're not hard. You have to
Interesting.
do
So
them really well.
What are those techniques? I'm
yeah, what are
very
those
curious now.
techniques? What?
Pointing, drawing, and flatting, and pointing, drawing, flatting, and butchering is pretty much everything in a knife forge.
Okay.
So learning to put something into a point, learning how to draw it out lengthwise, learning how to flatten it, learning how to butcher off steel. That's pretty much all you have to do to forge a knife.
So if you wanted to start in blacksmithing, if you wanted to just start from zero, the knife would be kind of where you would start?
Oh, no. Ornamental stuff, because all those practices are much easier to do on mild steel. It's much easier to learn them making like fireplace pokers and
Oh.
marshmallow toasters and
Okay.
fireplace tools. You're much better to learn it on the anvil just with mild steel and how to manipulate the metal because things move different. And they move different under
Gotcha.
a hand hammer than they do under a power hammer, and different under a press. And
Got it.
any smart kid that's, some smart 14-year-old can learn my entire job in 6 months from a book. One of those little savants. But show it to me on the anvil. It's an
Yeah.
entirely different prospect.
Interesting.
Now, do
Wow.
you work with modern grip materials at all, like G10 or Kydex or
Sure.
anything like that? Okay. Just kind of depends on what the customer wants as far
Yeah, and it's
as.
not something that I overly prefer. Like, I like some carbon fibers, like some of the
Mhm.
stuff coming out of fat carbon in Lithuania is great. And I use it occasionally, but it's dirty and it's nasty. And I don't like to get it on my skin and breathe it and all that bullshit.
I was gonna say it's that stuff working any of those resined type products have to
Yeah.
just be nasty, right?
And they're pretty in a certain aspect, but they also look very Fifth Element, modern, spacey,
Yeah.
which has its place. Most of the time, I'm looking for more of that natural, earthy, warm wood
Mhm.
feel. So I mostly end up using woods.
And when you're
There's
doing woods,
exceptions.
I think a lot of people don't understand this because people think you're just fitting wood to a handle, but the wood itself, you stabilize that, right? Like how is that
Yeah, absolutely.
is that a process that can if you can explain to us because we're really dumb about this, but that stabilizing wood is there a bunch of different ways to do that? Does everybody kind of do it the same way?
There are a bunch of different chemicals to do it, and there's a
Okay.
couple different methods. One of them is to pull it under a vacuum inside the fluid for a period of time until all the air bubbles are gone. Then release the vacuum and let it sit for a period of time so that the atmospheric pressure forces the resin in. The guys that are more advanced will then add pressure to it on top of that to force it in better. And of course, it has to be absolutely bone dry before you start. So it has to be kiln dried even after it air dries before you start.
Oh.
And all that said, you have to remember it's still a wood product. All you've done is replace the airspace with plastic resin. So it's less susceptible to water. It's less, susceptible to staining, but it still has the wood fiber as the fiberglass in a fiberglass material. You haven't
So
replaced the wood fiber.
so those plastic impregnated or I guess it's like resin impregnated woods that you're using for a handle, those could still rot someday.
Yeah, and they can still get wet and they can still take water on it, just at a much more limited capacity than the
Ah,
natural wood product would, because we've replaced all the gaps in the wood, or at least we're hoping to replace all the gap in the wood with
right.
the resin, so there's not the airspace that's normally naturally there in wood.
So
So
I
I
think I've actually stabilized wood before and not known what I was doing because for a science project in like 10th grade or 11th grade, I built a
Mm.
bridge and I dropped balsa wood into a tube of pure ammonia and just let it sit until it stopped floating and then pulled it out, put it in the jig and bent it the way I needed it to and let it dry.
Yeah, the difference is the ammonia will actually evaporate back out of the wood.
Ah,
And
Okay.
these polyresins go in there and they're still wet, and then after you pull them out and they've been soaked with it, they usually have a heat process, so it's like a heat activated resin. And then that
Gotcha.
liquid plastic turns into solid plastic when it's introduced to enough heat.
so it's
And
just
then
like the same kind of resin you'd use in fiberglass sometimes. You just suck it
yeah,
into them.
it's
Okay.
a different resin, but it's the same exact premise.
Okay.
Like if you've
Interesting.
used Bondo,
Yeah.
it's the same premise.
Okay. You just vacuum seal it, the wood sucks it in. So I didn't think of this until just now that because there are different woods with different open grain and closed grain wood, then I would assume that different kinds of woods accept that resin and that stabilization process way differently then.
Sure, like good ironwood, you can't stabilize; it won't take anything. Its Janko
Really?
hardness is too high. There's no space. And then you get
Inch
like rosewoods and ebonies that already are so full of oil. There's no room for liquids to go into them.
That's
interesting.
cool. That's really cool.
That's
Yeah,
really
so
cool.
if you
So
see like
it's
African blackwood or ebony from me, it's not stabilized because it wouldn't do anything anyway.
so it's not about the softer wood or the harder wood. It's also got to do with like the grain being open and able to accept that too, I guess.
Yeah, and the oiliness of it.
Yeah.
Like Mediterranean olive, which is a really bright light wood.
Mhm.
It's completely full of oil. You can't get anything into it. I've tried before. I can't get it to pick up any weight no matter how hard I try. And I know someone's going to say, I've done it, or this guy does it. Maybe somebody can do it.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know a way to do it without finding a way to strip the oils out first and replace them with plastic. And you might as well just leave the oils in there.
Interesting. So it's got to be drier wood, like less oily wood, and it has to be I
Open
guess
grain too.
open grain. So that's really crazy. I had no idea. I mean, I know I've sent you some wood that from trees I've murdered myself to put on knives for me before, and I happen, we don't have fancy woods like that. It's walnut and maple, and they've always come out really well. But those aren't they're not crazy African hardwood, and they're not really oily wood. So I
No,
guess
they
they're
both
kind of
stabilize really nice. It's the stuff like Mediterranean olive and ebony and desert ironwood. Anything that's super hard or anything that's super oily just doesn't stabilize well.
like the teaks and the mahoganies. They're just
Right.
too oily. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
sense.
I
So
had no idea.
do you you probably don't do it much either way, but do you cut yourself more or burn yourself more?
Oh, good question.
Define a burn.
That's a man who's been burned before, right there.
We'll say at least first degree. No, we'll say at least second degree. So blistering at a minimum.
So probably
Blistering.
still burning, but I'm at that point where I was in my shop one time hammering something, and someone's like, "You're on fire! You're on fire!" I'm like, "Yeah, I know. As soon as the heat's done, I'll take my shirt off. Chill the out.
That's awesome.
Fire running up your side because your shirt's on fire.
I
This is why you only wear natural materials in the forge.
Oh,
Because
that's
they
awesome.
burn, they don't melt.
I was
That's
watching.
a good tip.
I was watching one of your videos, and you were working something. We were working a piece of steel, like maybe a belt sandery thing, and it's like you don't even have gloves on, and I'm like, holy shit, that's a Renaissance man right there. Like I'm a little bitch about that. I wear gloves when I do anything, and you're just sitting there like, yeah, working steel without gloves on. That's amazing.
I very rarely wear gloves. There's processes where I definitely do. Like when I'm forging on the press or heavy stuff, I wear mill gloves just because it gives you time, gives you something you can shuck off if you get hot before you get burnt bad. And I mean bad. But most stuff, you don't have the tactile dexterity with gloves, and your
So-
hands get hard after a while.
That's what it is. It's just being able to work it intimately with that material. You can't wear gloves to do it.
Yeah, it's a lot harder. And it's one of those things like where the big risk is, I believe in gloves, absolutely. But it's like hearing protection. I agree with hearing protection. When things are really noisy, I always wear hearing protection. But I learned a long time ago that a deaf guy can't hear good. A blind guy is crippled. So I never cheat on the eye protection.
Got it.
That makes sense.
Interesting. I had one of our listeners actually asked this about if there was an easy way to remember like the temperature of the metal by color. Like, is there a mnemonic or something like to keep it simple, stupid, or is there some way to know like, oh, if it's cherry red, I do this, or those kinds of things? Is there a way to how do you remember that? It's just all
there's
up
not
there.
really one that I know of for mnemonics. I mean, if we're talking about forging colors like from black through cherry, golds and whites, where you're forging, where you're doing things is very dependent on the material.
Okay.
And this happens to me every time. Like I just did a railing for a cabin that I've been building for my wife on here on our property, and I hadn't forged a railing in a while. Hadn't forged any mild steel in a while, and I'm like, I keep messing this up. What the hell's going on? I'm like, you're too hot, dumbass. 'Cause
Interesting.
I'm used to forging all these high-end tool steels, and you're forging those up around 2,000. And when you're forging mild steel, you're down at like 1,400, 1,500, and you're just fine. It moves like crazy. And even that hot, they move too easy, and they do weird things to you sometimes. So there's not really a mnemonic for it. It's just experience, and the colors change based on your ambient light. In the old days, before they figured out that you could use a magnet to tell that you were at the Curie point critical, the blacksmiths would like put blinds over all their windows and close all the doors so they had a consistently dark room so they could judge the color.
Oh wow! Like literally working in the dark, and that's how you knew.
Yeah, work in the dark.
temperatures.
So the color's the same all the time so they could judge it. Because if you have a sunny day, you'll be looking at something like, that's not that hot.
Oh,
That's
But it's
a
really gold.
super
It just
old
looks
school
red because
trick.
it's so bright out. Or if it's dark and you're forging, like it's really, really hot and bright. And if it were daylight, it'd look black. or just barely cherry red. Cherry red.
That's
That's
So
a super,
crazy.
super old school trick.
yeah, so ambient. You just until you're really experienced, you can't go by color. Use temperature. Buy one of those stupid laser thermometers or get a thermocouple. And then if you're talking about like the temper colors that show up on sub black steel, like the straw and blue and everything,
Yeah,
because I think
yeah.
that was in. There's no good mnemonic for that I know of either. But they start at that blue and go up through the yellow, start at the yellow and go up through the blue, and you just got to kind of feel it out. And you can make a knife and temper it that way. I mean, I've done it. I've seen a lot of guys do it, especially when they're doing it like these new quick forge things they do together ever since the Forge and Fire thing came out. I've done it
Oh,
down
yeah.
in Texas with some boys, with Gahagan and those guys. But it's really not the product that you get when you put something to a known temperature for a known period of time.
Okay.
It's you're definitively making a subpar product for the interest of entertainment. At that point, we're doing it. But if you're doing it that way as a method of manufacturing, you're not doing a good job.
So, after watching like Forge and Fire, and I'm sure that you have built your shop and your forge to meet your needs, if you had to recreate, shit hits the fan, Teotihuacan situation where everything is gone, how would you go about creating a new forge? What would be kind of the base steps there?
Well, I mean, I just go the old ways, but I'm an old school blacksmith. You build a fire pit, you find some wood and make charcoal, or you find some coal and use coal. Make yourself a bellows. It's
So it really is just that easy. Get high temperature burning
our
material and more
ancestors
air.
figured this out thousands of years ago when they still thought that a redheaded girl peeing in the quench tank was the only way to get the steel to come out right.
Wait, is that not how you do it?
I'm just saying. And this stuff worked for them because they figured out this method of how they're going to do things, and they all did it the same, and they passed it down.
God.
Remember, high blacksmiths, high pay, high rates of literacy, so they could write things down. They created these things through folklore and tradition
Yeah.
and history and all kinds of stories, but really all they did is over many, many generations of sharing information is they trial and errored their way to modern science.
That's
Gotcha.
actually and this is a reoccurring theme I've noticed throughout this today, Eric, is that like we've already done this before, and it seems like there's people out there that are kind of trying to reinvent the wheel, but blacksmithing is old school, and we've probably already figured out the right way to do it for the most part, right? I mean, there's
Yeah,
tech
you
and
can tweak
science.
you can tweak the processes, AC. I mean, you can get better metallurgy because a steel mill is a steel mill is a fucking laboratory that makes things. If you've ever been in one for real, like a real steel mill, like they are crazy fancy.
Really?
So we can make better materials now, and you can make better machines. Like the hydraulic press is a game changer for anybody that's in this. So is the power hammer. Like there's modern things that are
Right.
better. We have better files. We have better abrasives. We have better grinding machines. You name it. But don't forget some of these beautiful antiquities that look like they're brand new from Japan that are 2,000 years old. You can't tell they're not brand new if you look at them.
That's crazy.
I mean,
And I gotta ask, what is in your quench tank? Is it oil, water, the blood of your enemies? What do you use?
all right. So I use water some because when you're doing Hammond lines, there's some effects you can't get with anything but water.
Okay.
It's not science. I mean, there's science in it, but it's PFM, as my father likes to call it, pure fucking magic. You got to just figure it out, and you're going to fail. And if you change locales and your water changes, everything changes.
No shit. It's
Yep.
that specific. Like the pH or the calcium,
Dissolved
whatever.
solids, the
No
pH
shit.
level. You change water, you change everything.
So I know in the last 10 years or so, you've moved down to you're in Tennessee now,
I
I
had to
think.
change all my temperatures and everything when I switched wells.
No kidding.
They didn't change much for me because I went from pretty hard, clean water to pretty hard, clean water.
Got it.
but it did change. I changed the temperature of my quenching bath for water by about 7 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's crazy.
Mhm. But when we get to oil, I've seen guys come up with canola oil and transmission fluid and blah, 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 blah. By industrial quenchant, we've got metallurgists and chemists that have developed this just for hardening steel. Not just so it hardens the steel well, but also so there's good life safety when you're putting hot steel in the material.
So
Okay.
it doesn't catch
So,
fire.
like, well, not just catch fire, but what's it gassing off when you burn it?
Oh, yeah. It
I don't
could
know
kill
what
you.
comes off transmission fluid when you burn it.
Right.
I don't know, man. I know I'm making like this surprise face. You can't see it if you're listening home, but I don't know what comes off that shit. But like Sunoco makes sun quench products, and I use sun quench 1021 as my slow oil, which is a good oil. And then you've got
Okay.
Parks. If you can't get anything else, you can get that from like Brownells and stuff, and that's good quenchant. And then Houghton out of Pennsylvania makes a bunch of different quenching oils, and you're not gonna backyard finagle something up that's better than what all the chemists and metallurgists are developing
Th-
together for industry for hardening the tool steels that you are actually using to make your product.
That's really interesting. I mean, that's actually a really good point, is that you have these, yeah, now that we've brought tech into the equation, you're probably not going to figure something else out better in your
No,
backyard.
you're
now that
not a
we've got,
chemist and a metallurgist, and you're certainly not 500 chemists and 500 metallurgists
yeah,
working together. You
that's,
probably have a high school education, let's be honest. Maybe you went to college a little bit.
And you're using Chat GPT to figure out what's the best oil to quench this with.
Right. And then that stuff this comes up so frequently. I get to ask this question with knife makers and have talk about it. It's just like, it's a no-brainer to me. And yeah, I know this stuff's expensive. You have to spend
mhm,
like $300 to get a sufficient quantity. But for someone that's like even a full-time bladesmith like me, and I make knives every day,
mhm.
constantly. I make a lot of knives a year. Not like a production company, but for an individual crafter, I make a lot of knives. 5 gallons will last you almost the rest of your life if you
Oh,
just don't
wow.
let water in it. Like
You're
it
not
doesn't.
cycling that out every week.
No, it's
What?
made to be used repeatedly. I mean, I've got
Wow.
300 gallons of Sunquench 1021 sitting behind the shop that I bought off an industrial blacksmith shop that went out of business in Pittsburgh. They'd been using it for years. It's still beautiful. They just filtered it. It's almost like new.
So the oil
I'll
itself
never use that up.
doesn't change chemical composition as soon as you put metal and all the stuff that's on the metal in there.
No, it's developed for doing that.
Wow.
The worst thing on it is dwell time and heat. But again, you're not an industrial blacksmith shop, so you're not passing like 5,000 pounds of anvils through it.
Hmm.
Right.
And then water is its bane. So
Interesting.
don't get water in it.
Keep
Okay.
it quote unquote dry
Yeah.
and filter it
Stuff
every once
lasts
in a while.
almost
clean it up.
forever. It's ridiculously long lasting.
That's crazy.
And you spend not that much more money than you would if you go out and buy 10 gallons of canola oil. And
Okay.
I don't even know why we do that. That just seems dumb to me. Like, I understand, like, if we're looking at things from like the whole shit hits the fan prepper thing, you
Yeah.
know, if you're stuck and you are going to be the blacksmith and it's the zombie apocalypse and you're on the Walking Dead and you've got to start quenching stuff and there doesn't happen to be industrial quenching around. Sure. I mean, tallow works,
Whatever you got.
olive oil works, all kinds of things work. But we're not talking about making the best possible product then. We're just talking about making a passable one. And like with a sword, sure, a wonderful modern steel and the best dimensions and the best geometry in the world is the best sword, but you'd be better off with a wrought iron sword with great geometry than you are with the best steel in the world made poorly.
Yeah.
And that just comes down to the quality of the work and the experience that goes into it. And that's why you're paying more for a high quality tool in a knife.
Yeah, I've been making tools my whole life pretty much on and off. And I mean, I can get you a pretty damn good edge off a parking curb. But it's not going to be the edge that I can get you off of a high quality modern Japanese waterstone.
Yeah. Interesting. So, Eric, we're getting close to the end. One more question that I've got for you. So it is the end of the world. It is the zombie apocalypse. Then, what is the one handgun that you get if you get to pick one handgun for the rest of your life? What is it?
Oh, I'm old school, baby. It's a hardballer all day long.
1911.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's a two world wars. It's like I
Uh,
love it. It's funny because I think the hard baller, right? I think that's an AMT product. I think AMT Automag made 1911 they called the hard baller back in the
yeah,
day.
it became kind of a nickname amongst a lot of the WW2 boys and stuff.
Yeah,
For just
yeah.
I'm modern about it. I'll put hollow points in it. Don't get me wrong, they work better.
That's that's awesome.
But
And I think Chris, I think I told you I had this knife. I have a Christensen 1911 that's just a beautiful. It's a work of art. It's a 1911 that has a Damascus slide on it. And I had emailed a picture to Eric and I said, I want a matching knife for this gun. It's just beautiful. And he God, he got close, man. We took the same carbon fiber grips. I think it's VX or ZX. I forget the name of the company. They make real
VZ
carbon.
grips, yeah.
What is it? Is it
VZ.
VZ? Sorry, VZ. VZ. They make they those grips come on the Christensen, and Eric took those grips and literally ground down the same 1911 grips and fit it on a Damascus knife that matches the Christensen slide. It's beautiful.
That's
It was
badass.
entertaining for me to make. Actually, it was
You know what though?
one of the few weird requests that I actually rather enjoyed.
You know what? I was going to ask because I'm looking at this thing. It is not stamped. It does not have the Fuda Forge stamp. I think you're telling me you didn't like it. It's I noticed. It's like a chisel point to you.
A
This
little
poor
bit, yeah, maybe.
poor bastard little knife. It's gorgeous. Anyway,
No, it
all
was
right.
cute. I liked it. It was fun.
So, Eric, how does our audience get in touch with you? How do they order? How do they get a hold of you?
Well, I have my website, fudoforge.com, fudoforge.com. And that's probably the best way. On there, you
Okay.
can email me, and I'm not hiding stuff. My phone number's there, my address, everything. So as long as you have access to that, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, of course. So
Okay.
those are also possibles. And it's a pretty unique name, so it's pretty easy to find if you go looking for it. A web search
Awesome.
will
And
pull it up. Pretty
we maintain a blog and a website, and we've got a little bit of social, so we'll post all your stuff there for people to find you. And I all your shop link is there too, right? All your knives that are in stock ready to ship are there on
Yeah,
FudaForge.com as well, right?
absolutely.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you coming on because this has been just eye opening as far as the blacksmithing and the the fucking science magic that goes into it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been fun. Happy to do it anytime, really. Hope I didn't get too technical or be too
No.
annoying or anything. So
No,
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 this is great.
not at all. And I guarantee you, we are going to have listeners that reach out to you or reach out to us directly to ask questions about this or add comments and concerns and all that. So you may get some follow up from us, just questions on stuff because it is really interesting. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, just it truly is. It is science and it's also fucking magic. So
Mhm.
I appreciate you coming on and bridging the gap a little bit for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. Anytime.
Awesome. Thanks.
Absolutely. And I think that is about going to wrap us up. But we definitely appreciate you coming on, Eric, and join us next week for the next phase of our adventure together. We are going to go over some pretty interesting stuff. If I'm reading our schedule right. So definitely tune in next week. Check out fudoforge.com and we will see you then. And just remember, you are your own stakeholder.